Marvel's Phoenix Man, the ultimate power rises. Please like, share, and subscribe. Episode 11. The ability to fuse X genes. This is not the first time he has done it. He has successively fused the ability to deform and perceive danger. If the light is on the power of the Phoenix, he who only masters the power of the Phoenix is not a mutant, because the power of the Phoenix is fused with his soul, which is an innate thing and does not belong to the genetic level. After fusing other X gene abilities, he is considered a mutant. In the 6th District Laboratory, Liang's figure appeared directly in it. The pale red smoke around him dissipated, and he took out a test tube from his arms, which was the original liquid of the saber-toothed tiger gene that was pure before, and a mechanical arm hung from the ceiling, and the test tube was clamped and retracted. Seeing this, Liang said loudly, "Open the test area, deeply analyze the target X gene, and then combine my own gene to calculate the optimal fusion formula." "Okay, sir, please wait, this process may take about half an hour." Liang nodded and came to the test area by himself, making preparations before the fusion. He has 2 fusion X gene experience. There is no half worry about this. The fusion conditions have been quite mature. Even the worst plan is just fusion failure. X gene failure once does not work to come twice, 2 times will not work, 3 times will always succeed. As for what gene collapse or the like, there is no such thing. He spent more than $1 billion on gene isolation and extraction, and in the X gene fusion, he used tens of billions of funds. The dark part of his hands is basically the product of the fusion of X genes. He has only fused 2 X gene abilities for himself, but he has fused dozens of times for his subordinates, and the wealth of experience is not just talk, the accumulation of relevant data. He dares to say that it is the first in the whole world now. In short, the conditions are quite mature, and there is no need to worry about it at all. Half an hour passed quickly, and Leon's preparations were complete, at which point he took off his coat and lay naked on the test bench, allowing the nutrient solution to soak his body, a snorkel attached to his nose and mouth so that he could keep breathing. Even now, even if he can survive without breathing, and even if he is exposed to the space environment, he will not die, but breathing has become an instinct, and during the fusion of other X genes, any negligence will lead to fusion failure, so he still follows his own comfortable way. He was awake and conscious at this time, able to sense everything that was happening around him, and at this time a robotic arm was stretched out on the test bench, with a slender needle at the top, and 2 robotic arms hanging from above, and the top was also a needle. Then these 3 robotic arms pierced the needle into Liang's body, namely the heart, spine, and brain gate, and saw that there was a reddish X gene stock solution inside, which was injected into his body. After the X gene stock liquid enters the body, it will fuse with his own genes, which is a slow process, and at the same time, several robotic arms are stretched out and inserted into his body, and various extremely small operating instruments are moving in his body. Some are combing through his physical activity, such as blood flow and pulse, while others are cutting and settling at the cellular level to adapt to the changes brought about by the new X gene. This process lasted for more than 3 hours, and Liang floated motionless in the nutrient solution, closing his eyes as if he were asleep. But in fact his consciousness was very clear, and he could clearly feel everything that was happening on his body. For 3 hours, he endured all kinds of severe pain, but he survived it hard. The fusion of the new X gene by the body can be said to have disrupted and reorganized itself from the genetic level, which is equivalent to evolution, directly compressing the hundreds of thousands of years of ordinary organisms in 3 hours, and it is conceivable what kind of changes have just been carried out in his body. Buzz. The liquid in the nutrient trough suddenly trembled, rippled layer by layer, and then he saw a layer of reddish light oozing from around his body, like thin smoke, and his body slowly floated up from the nutrient trough and slowly rose into the air. The robotic arm linked to him had been withdrawn, and by this time he was floating in the air, wrapped in reddish soot. "Sir, the integration was successful." Svija's voice came. Liang also opened his eyes at the same time, and there was a hint of joy in his eyes. His body changed from lying flat to upright, the muscles on his body were clear, his complexion was a healthy white, his eyes were extremely energetic when they were opened, and there was a faint red light in the depths of his eyes, which looked a little strange. The corners of Liang's mouth were slightly cocked, and with a stroke of his hand, a scalpel flew in the distance, easily cutting a deep bone opening in his arm, and the blood immediately flowed. "Aha!" Liang's face remained unchanged, watching the wound recover quickly within 3 seconds, and the joy on his face became more and more intense. The X gene is indeed very successful in fusion, and recovering from the injury consumes my own energy, and for me now, even if I am slashed by 1,000 knives, I can recover in a short period of time, and this recovery ability is stronger than that of saber-toothed tigers and Wolverine. In addition, the Phoenix power that has been silent for more than 3 years has just had a sense of loosening, and I think that in a few days, the Phoenix power will have a new improvement. As he said, the shackles of the body are opened, thus opening the chain reaction, can withstand more Phoenix forces, and in the future it will gradually grow like a snowball. Episode 12. If he were given the highest level of ability, he would divide the power of the Phoenix into 5 levels, the first level being telepathy and teleportation, and mind control. And the second level is energy devouring, from the smallest involuntary absorption of free energy, to the later can independently choose to swallow a certain energy, and even the whole sun. Liang is in the early stage of this stage. Because of his physical strength, the energy that can withstand is not too much, can only be regarded as the more powerful among the mutants, not brilliant. After possessing the healing factor, he can increase the strength of his body, so that he can withstand more energy, so that the growth of the Phoenix power will no longer be too limited. He will grow to the apex of the second level in a short period of time. As for the third level, it is the ability to manipulate external energy, which is like a point dialing the surface. Leon flicks his finger in New York, and the west coast of the United States will roll up a hurricane, which is a change in the application of energy, no longer limited to itself. And at this stage, the manipulation of things will also reach the subatomic level, which can easily decompose and arrange any matter, and at this level, it can basically be called a god on the earth. The power of the Phoenix of the fourth level is to plunder and apply the energy of the entire universe, which can interfere with time and reality, which is the power that only gods can have. As for the fifth level, it is the ultimate form of the Phoenix power, and consciousness projects the entire multiverse, breaking the shackles between each other, affecting the operation of the entire multiverse, and easily destroying any dimension and timeline. Liang's current application of the Phoenix power could not be said to be shallow, but in the end it was still in the early stage of application. Before being subject to his own influence, his ability grew slowly, and now he did not have the scruple. Gently shaking his fist, he could feel that the space was trembling under his own ability, as if with a slight force, he could shatter the space. This is not an illusion. Teleportation is the ability to break space, to go to another coordinate direction. Space in his eyes is just an infinite number of points in the geometric constant, and it is very easy to break. Aha! He groaned softly, his head held high, and a reddish glow surrounded him, which was the embodiment of the Phoenix's power, like a flame. It's a kind of fire, but more precisely, it's an energy entity that has the same super high temperature, but if Leon allows it, it attaches to someone else, and it will make people feel like a spring breeze. The power of the Phoenix began to grow, and it was faster than I thought. The next moment, I saw that the skin on his body had become scorched black, and in some places there was even thick smoke, as if it had been burned. Then these scars were covered in a short period of time and continued to be destroyed in the next moment. According to my own growth rate, it will take at least 6 or 7 years to reach the third level, but now there are healing factors in my body, and in this way of pulling seedlings and encouraging growth, it will only take a week at most, but during this period I will suffer a lot. Leon said to himself, then shrugged. Leave him alone, there are no sequelae, and this is the price that needs to be paid to gain power. He allowed this destruction and repair of his body to continue to alternate, although the pain, but his face did not change a little. Sir, the saber-toothed tiger was released half an hour ago, and now the Dark Ministry has lost its surveillance of him. Speech's voice came into Leon's ears. Leon only raised his eyebrows slightly, and did not feel any surprise, and nodded. Tell the Dark Ministry, don't pay attention to the movements of the saber-toothed tiger, and collect other useful information from now on. Okay sir, I'll pass on your orders, and besides, the Dark Ministry has uploaded a message that you should be interested in. What's the news? Congressman Kelly will be submitting the mutant registration bill to Congress tonight, and with the available information, this bill is likely to pass. Aha! Leon nodded, and then said to himself, so, the plot of X-Men 1 will soon begin, and I have tried my best not to affect the direction of the plot from the beginning, but this plot is still more than a year late, and it seems that the plot will definitely change a lot in the future. Anyway, it's a real world, my every move will always bring a lot of changes to the world, and I don't have to dwell on these anymore. With this thought, he closed his eyes, and telepathically confirmed in a moment the direction in which Victor was now, and found that he was moving in the direction of the Manhattan neighborhood. It's time to look forward to what's going to happen next. Magneto, don't let me down. Episode 14, Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C., is where the United States exercises legislative power, and this is the political center of the whole United States, from which all new laws were born. Unlike the entertainment metropolis of New York, Washington was initially positioned as the political center of the United States, full of seriousness. Tonight, there will be a bill on mutants, and it is likely to pass here, which is the famous mutant registration bill. This bill requires that all mutants throughout the country must take the initiative to record it, and violators are breaking the law, and if such a bill is passed, it will be a big blow to the entire mutant race. At that time, the identity of all mutants will be superficial, and their every move will fall into the eyes of people with hearts, and there will be no security at all. Because of Leon's relationship, this plot is a period of time late, and its fundamentals have also changed. Leon wasn't too concerned about it, but he had already wanted to meet with Magneto, so he had come to Washington early tonight to wait for news and an estate under his name. He expected that tonight Magneto's side would definitely move, because he had already positioned the saber-toothed tiger, and this man was now on Washington's side. In the end, the plot has changed. In the original plot, the saber-toothed tiger did not make much peace with Magneto this time, and now it is obvious that it has taken sides. Leon stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window with a glass of red wine, watching the traffic on the street below him, and the Capitol Hill in the distance, solemn and solemn. At this time, Congress had begun, and the Kelly MP should have begun his impassioned speech. Sir, 15 members of Groups A, B, and E have lurked in the surrounding area, and another group has entered the Congress, and now Congress has begun, and Congressman Kelly is introducing his mutant registration bill. Speech's voice suddenly rang out. Leon nodded, took a sip of the red wine in the glass, and with a gentle toss, the wine glass floated slowly to the table next to him. He got up and moved. Let the three groups pay attention, any situation can be reported at any time. Okay, sir, but we haven't found anything like Magneto and the others yet. Don't worry, they'll do it right away, Leon said firmly. Time passed minute by minute, and in the blink of an eye, 10 minutes passed, and Leon suddenly received a notice from Svija. Sir, there was a sudden intrusion in Congress, and the submission of the bill was forced to be temporarily suspended. The image came in. All right, sir. The next moment, a projection screen appeared in front of Leon, showing everything that was happening in Congress, and at this time, many members of Congress were in a mess, surrounded by people and scattered around, and in a corridor, there was a fierce exchange of fire with the guards. When Leon saw this, he couldn't help but shake his head. The people of the Brotherhood of Mutants are all a bunch of fools, and this kind of action at this time will only deepen the antagonism between the two ethnic groups, a bunch of empty and brainless guys. No wonder they will be treated as street rats, and everyone will shout and beat them. Sir, are we going to act? Svija asked. No, wait for the Mutant Brotherhood to appear. As Leon said this, a burst of red light suddenly appeared on his body, and then the figure disappeared from the spot, and the next moment, he appeared at the top of the Capitol Hall, standing in the shadows and looking at the whole situation. Below, countless people scattered around, looking very chaotic, while behind them were gunshots and a loud roar. Let the three teams follow Senator Kelly Hospital and don't lose it. Okay, sir. The chaos didn't last long, and after 4 or 5 minutes, the gunfire on this side stopped. Apparently the person who caused the chaos had been contained, and by this time all the lawmakers had left, and the situation was controlled by a lot of FBIs. Sir, the Mutant Brotherhood has appeared and has come into contact with Congressman Kelly's motorcade. Leon nodded, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and he said, after they catch Senator Kelly, let the three teams follow. All right, sir. Everything was going according to his plan, and the reason why he arranged it this way was to draw out Magneto, and he wanted Magneto's X gene, which was not a day or two. It is reasonable to say that he has such a powerful divine power as the power of the Phoenix, and he should not have to pay attention to other X genes, and he himself is also so. His mind control is naturally stronger than the magnetic control of Magneto. But he needs more powerful X genes, whether to strengthen himself or to strengthen his subordinates. These strong X genes are indispensable. From the moment he understood that this was the Marvel world, he had always had an idea to become the highest point of the entire Marvel world and even the multiverse. It's arguably his ambition, and he's been doing it all the time. Episode 15. Although the power of the Phoenix is one of the most powerful divine powers in the Marvel world, it is definitely not an invincible existence. To know that this world is based on Marvel comics, although it has always been the route of the Marvel movie, but some of the forces hidden in the shadows are desperate. For example, the chaotic power of the Crimson Witch, and then the power of the Sentinel's Million Sun, as well as the Elemental, the Transcendent, the Star Eater, Thanos, Dormammu, and even the Court of Life and the OAA, some powerful forces in the dark of this world, which are absolutely terrifying to count. So Leon started the plan early, to strengthen himself and make himself the highest point. He thinks so, and he does this, and he positions himself not to be good and orderly, nor to have any evil chaos. He is him, not involved in any party, a faction of his own. Sir, Congressman Kelly has been taken away, and it is the Witch and the Fireman, who are now moving north, and our men have followed. Svija rode. Very good, let people keep up and report to me at any time. Leon rode. All right, sir. Leon was now connected to the saber-toothed tiger's mental cage in his mind, and had already determined the location of the latter, not in a hurry, but waiting for Congressman Kelly to meet with Magneto before acting. The wait was more than half an hour, by which time the entire Capitol Hill side was in chaos, police cars roaring along the road, sirens sounded everywhere, and a pair of special operations and FBI men were also on the move. The attack on Congress and the abduction of a member of parliament is no small matter. Leon only shook his head when he saw this. A bunch of reckless people who only know how to use their abilities indiscriminately, what do they expect to do? With this thought, Svija's voice rang in his ears. Sir, the hiding place of Magneto and the others has been found, and the 3 teams have not ventured in, so as not to be discovered. Liang heard the corners of his mouth slightly cocked, shook his head, and said, no need to hide anymore. I would like to know who can win when a dozen mutants with healing factors meet with Magneto's gang. Tell the 3 groups to start the attack, with the goal of capturing Magneto and the witch. Okay sir, the order has been given. Leon nodded, then the figure disappeared in a reddish glow, and the next moment he appeared in a small town on the outskirts of Washington, D.C., which had no downtown Washington at all, and the streets were sparsely covered with pedestrians and vehicles. He was standing on the roof of a building more than a dozen stories high, and a block below was already moving. I saw 5 people coming out of the street, all dressed in suits and masks, and on the other side, there were several similar people gathered from outside. The 3 groups of 15 people are all powerful mutants who have completed X genetic modification, possess the healing factors extracted from saber-toothed tigers, and these people will show more powerful fighting abilities than saber-toothed tigers. With Leon's orders, these people were not hiding themselves, so they rushed directly to the middle of the factory. Magneto's gang is now inside, as a temporary foothold. Naturally there are people guarding outside, and the guards are also mutants. At this time they have found out that the situation is not right, and immediately launched an alarm with the inside. Liang saw the 3 groups of the Dark Ministry and instantly launched an attack on those people. The other side was also more than 10 people, but compared with the elite of the Dark Ministry, it could only be regarded as a very ordinary mutant, and it was still effective to bully ordinary people, but in the face of Liang's Dark Ministry elite, he could not even survive a round. 15 men easily and neatly defeated them, and the other side lost their mobility in a blink of an eye, and then the 3 groups attacked the factory. Sir, the communication equipment on the 3 groups was damaged in just an instant. Liang did not respond, quietly waited, and the next moment, he saw the wall of the factory building shatter, and several figures flew out from inside, some bodies folded together at a strange angle, some bodies were full of steel fragments, and even bloody intestines were broken. Well, in the end, it is the Omega-level mutant, who does have the means to solve the opponent in an instant. Liang nodded secretly and smiled silently. Unfortunately, these people are not so easy to deal with. Liang said that those who were obviously seriously injured, or who should have been killed directly, got up from the ground one by one, and the fatal injuries on their bodies were being quickly repaired. Then these people rushed in again, without Liang's command. Liang nodded slightly when he saw this, and took out a mask from his pocket and put it on his face. The mask was pure white, one side was a crying face, the other side was a smiling face, looking with a sense of strangeness. The next moment, his figure disappeared from the spot and appeared next to the factory building below. Episode 16. Liang was still wearing a loose sweatshirt, wearing a hat, with a mask that was half crying and half laughing, making him look like a strange feeling that could not be said. He walked forward so unhurriedly, and at his feet were the Mutant Brotherhood people, but they were already unconscious. The Dark Ministry under Leon knew his attitude towards the mutants and did not kill them, because it was a pity to kill them. These people would be his experimental materials, and living was far more valuable than death. There was already the sound of fighting in the factory, mixed with roars and the harsh sound of steel bending. There was no one in front of Liang, so he walked in. In the factory building, 15 people in the dark part were in some danger, being pierced back and forth by the steel flying in midair, and from time to time someone fell, and then stood up again. On the other side, there were more than a dozen people. The most central one was Magneto, and Liang felt the sight from him as soon as he came in. Magneto wears his iconic helmet and scarlet cloak, and although he looks old, his mental appearance is not half old, and from the moment Leon stepped into the factory, his eyes were on him. Leon seemed to be unaware of his gaze, just looking at his men and seeing the abilities they had shown, he couldn't help but nod his head secretly. The healing factor and each of them were perfectly integrated, so that these dark people all had the recovery ability comparable to that of saber-toothed tigers, and it was not easy to kill them in such a state. Then he turned his head to look at Magneto's side. There were more than 10 people in total, the most conspicuous of which were Magneto and the Witch, and the rest were the backbone members of the Brotherhood of Mutants. For example, the Burning Man who ran away from Professor X, as well as the Red Tank, the Leper Toad and others, did not shoot at this time, because in their opinion, although these people in the Dark Department have strange abilities, but with the help of Magneto, these people simply cannot turn over any storms. Next to these people was the saber-toothed tiger, who was already tense up at this time, ready to join the battle at any time, and on the ground next to him was Congressman Kelly, who had been knocked unconscious. I didn't see any movement from Magneto, but at this time, a steel bar in front of Liang suddenly flew up, shooting at Liang like a sharp arrow. Liang only waved his hand slightly, and the steel bar was changed by a strange force, shooting from a meter next to Liang's head to the back. Magneto frowned, at this time stretched out a hand, 5 fingers open, saw the countless steels in the open space between the two people, suddenly jumped up, and then those steels seemed to be pulled by some invisible force. One by one the stringed arrows attacked Liang, emitting a series of whistling in midair. Liang was covered by the mask, and others could not see his expression clearly, but at this time he was smiling lightly, and he also raised his hand, and his palm was stretched forward, and there was a light red light in his palm. The next moment, I saw that those steel metals were strangely stopped in midair, and there were steel pipes, steel bars, and even some iron plates in these metals, so they were frozen by invisible forces. The people on the Magneto side are all changing their faces at this time. Who are you? Magneto opened his mouth at this time. You'll know soon. Leon's voice came out through the mask. Hearing this sound, the saber-toothed tiger's body trembled, and his face suddenly showed a vicious look. He would never forget this voice even when he died. It was the owner of this voice that caused him to produce unparalleled humiliation and severe pain. But at this time, Liang did not seem to care about him, and even the others did not notice the strangeness of the saber-toothed tiger. Magneto said calmly, "You are a mutant, and I hope you will not make enemies of me, because then the consequences will be very serious." Liang shrugged. What the consequences are, who knows now? Magneto stopped talking. He was the king of magnetism, and at this time he increased his control over those metals, and everyone present saw that those metals suddenly trembled, as if they were about to get out of control. Liang has a strong mind control ability, and mind control can control more things than Magneto's control of magnetism, but at this time he has the heart to compete with it, so he also increases his control over those steels. The trembling frequency of the steel in the center intensified, as if controlled by an invisible hand, and both Leon and Magneto knew that they were now fighting for control of these metals. 1 second passed, 2 seconds passed, 3 seconds passed. In the stunned eyes of the mutant brothers, they saw that the metal was moving in the direction of Magneto. From the initial slowness to the final speed, the process was only 3 seconds. They immediately understood that the person in front of them might surpass Magneto in his ability to control the metal. Magneto himself, on the other hand, frowned deeper and deeper. Episode 17. Just then, Magneto suddenly stretched out his other hand and slammed it forward, and the factory building behind him quickly collapsed, and in the collapsed smoke, countless steel bars and metal blocks were splashed out, which were like cannonballs, directly towards Liang. Liang was not half surprised, still a hand stretched out in front of him, as if he did not see the metal that flew in, but the face hidden behind the mask, the smile was more and more obvious. At the same time, he saw a pale red light suddenly appear in the palm of his hand, showing a cluster of firelight bursting out, spreading out like a wall at once, and then the metal collided with it, but it fell into it silently. The next moment, I saw those reddish rays of light wrapped around those metals, making those metals like the previous metals all frozen in midair. Give it back to you. Liang's voice fell, and the metal wrapped in a reddish glow flew straight back, faster than when it came. Magneto's face finally changed, his hand slammed hard, and the invisible magnetic field enveloped the surroundings, and those metals hit the invisible barrier one by one, directly being ejected out. Those of the Brotherhood of Mutants, thanks to Magneto's magnetic barrier, were not damaged under its protection, but at this time they were drowned out by the smoke and dust caused by the metal smashing. Pinned down by Liang's side, Magneto naturally had no spare strength to deal with the Dark Ministry, and the 15 people of the 3 groups of the Dark Ministry, at this time, did not suffer any more metal blows, and quickly recovered one by one. Go for it. Liang ordered a slight wave of his hand, and the 15 people pounced directly on the opposite side, and at this time, the Magneto flew out of the smoke and dust and hovered directly above the factory. His face was solemn, and he did not have the indifference at the beginning. Who the hell are you? He spoke again, his voice full of surprise. I said you'll know soon. Leon still spoke unhurriedly. Then, like Magneto, he flew directly into the air to oppose him, and Magneto felt a huge pressure from him, and this pressure was unprecedented. The two are opposite, the air seems to be frozen between the two, facing Liang. At this time Magneto does not dare to have half a distraction, all without his protection. The people below will have to face the 3 groups of the Dark Ministry. Liang does not have a half-hearted look, and Magneto is a heavy heart. He was silent for half a moment, but in the end he opened his hands violently, and the invisible magnetic force field expanded rapidly, enveloping the radius of 3 kilometers in an instant, and under the shroud of this force field, most of the town was included, and within the force field, all the metal creations began to tremble. Oh! Capable of good. Liang sensed the strength of this force field and evaluated it in his heart, but he did not make any movements, as if he was indifferent to it. Boom! Within a radius of 3 kilometers, all the metal creations rose from the ground and soared into the air, and this alone almost destroyed the entire town. And in the midst of this roar, there are countless exclamations and screams. No need to think that it is those ordinary people. Liang saw Magneto's means, and also saw his indifference that did not put ordinary people's lives in his eyes at all. and he only shook his head faintly. At this moment, within a radius of 3 kilometers, all the steel surrounded the two people, densely covering a large area of the sky, and from a distance it looked like a thick cloud, full of an atmosphere that made ordinary people despair. The next moment, all the metal was pointed at Liang, and with a slight trembling, one by one, it turned into sharp arrows and attacked him. In the end, it is just a mutant. There is no concept of fighting with the brain. Magnetic energy generates electricity. If you can learn from the cannon sister of the scholar and make an electromagnetic cannon out, I may still be able to look up at you, but it is really too superficial to smash people like this. Liang said to himself like this. When all the metal struck him, he just silently held out his hands outstretched, and a pale red light emerged from his body, and in an instant, it swept away like a flame. The next moment, the reddish light wrapped all the incoming metals, but the terrifying kinetic energy was eliminated in a silent manner, and the metal was so eerily hovered, only because the fierce wind brought by the terrifying kinetic energy roared between the surrounding heavens and the earth. The application of your ability is really too superficial. Liang's voice was flat, his hands were gathered toward the middle, and with his movements, the countless metals around him were stripped of his control and converged towards the center of the two. How many of these metals there are? Their weight is definitely more than 100,000 tons. This terrible weight, the electromagnetic king can bear, Liang naturally can also control. Then I saw those metals come together, wrapped in countless reddish lights, gradually converging toward the center, and after a few moments, they converged into a huge ball. Liang squeezed his hands violently, and the round ball seemed to be squeezed by an invisible hand, just like a snowball, and the volume suddenly doubled and became incomparably solid. Episode 18. At the moment when those metals were compressed, an extremely strong high-frequency scream erupted, which was caused by the sound of the metal being violently compressed and tearing together, and the sound made the air ripple, spreading rapidly like ripples to the four sides. Under this shrill sound, ordinary people can easily feel the feeling of chest tightness and vomiting, but mutants are obviously not among them. Liang could not see the expression with the mask, and his eyes looked at the Magneto, whose face changed again, the heaviness of his face, and Liang's strength made him more and more uneasy. At this time, Liang only waved his hand slightly, and even after reducing the volume, it still appeared to be a huge metal ball, and it was directly thrown to the sea surface on the side. Boom! The metal ball was more than 30 meters long, and such a large high-density solid guy smashed on the sea, and suddenly stirred up a monstrous wave, and the sea water seemed to be detonated by a bomb, stirring up a huge splash of water more than 100 meters high, and then rolling up a wave to spread around. This movement is no smaller than Magneto overturning the metal of the entire town, or even more so. Liang said to Magneto at this time, now that there is no metal here, what means do you have? When the voice fell, his figure suddenly disappeared, and the next moment he appeared in front of Magneto's body. This instantaneous means of movement immediately made Magneto frightened, and subconsciously he quickly retreated backwards, but he was shocked to find that no matter how fast he was, Liang was so close to him and moved with him. Magneto hurriedly propped open the electromagnetic force field, and an invisible barrier suddenly stood between him and Liang, which immediately made Liang perceive the abnormality, and his movement was blocked, only to feel that he seemed to be in the mud, and his flight speed was sharply reduced. Well, the application of electromagnetic forces is quite skilled. Then he heard Magneto shout, his hands open high and pointing to the sky. The night was dark, but there was a layer of electric light on his body that suddenly flickered. Liang hid under the mask's face, his brow raised. He felt the change of the surrounding magnetic field. The electromagnetic force was moving and rubbing rapidly. The air was full of tiny electric sparks, and with the rapid movement of the electromagnetic force, the electric light gradually converged and formed. Crackle! Crackle! With a crisp sound, several thunderbolts formed, twisting in the air like an electric snake, with Magneto as the center. Thinking about the radiation around them, in the blink of an eye, they gathered together, and then instantly hit Liang's body. The electric light exploded on his body in an instant, as if he had been struck by lightning. There was no essential difference between the two, and a strong voltage burst out, as if he wanted to burn him. But the pity is that there has always been a mental barrier around Liang, and the lightning seems to hit his body, but in fact, it hits the barrier, and he himself has not been damaged at all. All this was invisible, and when the lightning dissipated, Liang, who fell into the eyes of the Magneto, was unscathed. Impossible! Magneto was horrified, his face suddenly became fierce, and this moment suddenly exploded. The magnetic force twisted around in a restless way, and out of thin air a series of thunderbolts suddenly appeared, disturbed and controlled by the magnetic force, and the retrospectives gathered together, twisting back and forth in midair. Liang didn't make much movement when he saw this, but silently raised his hand, and the pale red light on his hand flowed, and then suddenly expanded, and quickly spread, instantly enveloping the thick arc that had already formed. Then I saw the force wave his hand violently, and the thick arc formed by thousands of thunderbolts was as if it had been torn apart by an invisible claw, and suddenly became thousands of tiny arcs scattered in all directions. No. Impossible. Magneto was really horrified at this time. He couldn't imagine how powerful it was to be able to tear apart this high-energy arc, which was simply challenging his senses. Nothing is impossible. Liang's words fell, and the figure appeared in front of Magneto again, a hand slowly extended, gradually enlarging in Magneto's eyes. He tried to escape, but strangely found that the space around him seemed to be blocked, becoming as hard as steel, and even the gas needed for breathing had solidified. He was frozen, not only his body, but everything around him, and he saw a reddish light wrapped around him, making it impossible for him to make half a movement. Liang's hand landed on his head and took off his helmet, and the mask that seemed to cry and laugh revealed a chilling strangeness. "Welcome, you're going to be my next experiment." At the end of the conversation, Liang snapped his fingers, and without the protection of the helmet that isolated the mind control, Magneto was instantly knocked unconscious by Liang. Episode 19. Magneto just fainted like this. His body looked like he was about to fall from the sky, but he was slightly supported by Liang, and he was lifted up by an invisible force and floated beside him. He waved his hand again, and all the visions between heaven and earth had disappeared, the arc of electricity was gone, and the wind had become calm, but the town below had become as if it had been baptized by war, and it had already become dilapidated, and there were people everywhere running away in panic, and there were not only wounded people screaming and wailing. Seeing this, he only shook his head slightly. For ordinary people, the aftermath of the high-level mutant battle can bring great damage and impact to the society of ordinary people. In the face of this power, ordinary people have no ability to resist at all, which is why human society will be so discriminatory and hateful to mutants. There is also a considerable number of reasons, caused by the Brotherhood of Mutants. Compared to the moderate faction of Professor X and his party, the Brotherhood of Mutants is a complete wild, wantonly destroying social order, and is simply the public enemy of all order-abiding people. In this way, the gene pool can have a few more powerful mutant genes. Leon said this to himself. Below, the battle in the factory building was still going on at this time, and the 15 people of the 3 groups of the Dark Ministry were now pressing the opposite line, and the people of the Mutant Brotherhood were facing the people of the 3 groups of the Dark Ministry, and there was not much resistance at all. Each of the 15 people possessed a recovery ability comparable to that of a saber-toothed tiger, and with other abilities of their own, they were inherently superior. As soon as Liang's body flashed, he appeared in the factory building with the unconscious past Magneto. At this time the factory building was only a pedestal, and all the metal creations had long disappeared, and all of them were sucked away by the previous moment of Magneto. Seeing someone appear, everyone's eyes were cast over. The dark side saw that it was Liang. Naturally it was a big set, and the Mutant Brotherhood saw Magneto unconscious, and each face changed greatly. "Control all of them," Leon said quietly. "Yes, sir." Everyone responded, and then one by one, as if they had beaten chicken blood, there was Liang to supervise the battle, and they broke out with a more terrifying combat force than Feng Kai, and the people on the opposite side could not lift their heads at all. Saber-toothed tiger Victor roared angrily, but was entangled by 2 dark people, and the attacks between them were fists to flesh, or a claw could penetrate a person and bring up a large blood flower, but this was nothing at all, and gradually it was suppressed by the 2 dark people, until one person's body suddenly turned into liquid, wrapped like a large water ball, and the latter struggled in this water ball, but he could not break free. Until half a day later, the saber-toothed tiger Victor was suffocated, and gradually lost his resistance, until he finally faked his coma. The water ball regained its adult body, and the 2 shadows took out special instruments and buckled them around the neck of the saber-toothed tiger, a mutant ability suppressor developed by Leon's laboratory, and after being controlled, it was basically no different from ordinary people. The other Mutant Brotherhood members were no better, and the Burning Man was punched in the head by one of them, and he fainted without saying a word. The Wonder Woman had her arm broken and was fitted with a power suppressor in severe pain. The rest were injured, and one by one was quickly subdued, and the whole process took no more than 3 minutes. At this time, there was a burst of sirens in the distance, and the sound of a large helicopter propeller roaring in the sky, and Liang looked up, and more than 20 helicopters in the distant sky were roaring. "The movement on this side has been discovered, retreat." As soon as he finished speaking, a crack composed of a pale red light appeared in front of him, like a door, and it surged like water, and he directly stepped into it with Magneto. The 15 people of the dark side, directly with the mutants who were subdued, stepped into it one by one. This is an application of the power of the Phoenix, similar to the Phantom Cat's directional portal ability, but more arbitrary than it is. After they left, the portal quickly disappeared as if it had never appeared, only the sirens and helicopter blades around them roared closer and closer, and the entire town was almost destroyed in this incident, and the number of dead and wounded was unknown. Countless police and special operations personnel, as well as FBI and CIA personnel, quickly spread out in the town, inspecting everything here, and finally concluded that there were powerful mutants who had fought here, and the impact had reached tens of thousands of people. The men quickly found Congressman Kelly, who had not been taken away, and confirmed that one of the two sides at war was Magneto and others, while the other side could not determine their identity. These were naturally not what Leon needed to care about. He had already returned to a laboratory with Magneto at this time, and as for the others, he had teleported to the 6th District Laboratory. Here, he will have to parse Magneto's abilities. Episode 20. When Leon left, it was still more than 9 o'clock in the evening, and the movement in the small town outside Washington, D.C., was already in every TV station as an explosive headline after half an hour. Every TV station was speculating about who caused this movement, and finally pointed the finger at the mutants, and then almost the whole society began to criticize the mutants, believing that they were the source of the chaos of the entire society, and because of the abduction of Congressman Kelly, although it was not a big deal to prove it, everyone had a grudge against the mutants. In this case, the mutant registration bill was once again mentioned, and everyone was full of anger, and many people already felt that it was necessary to pass this bill. At this time, the whole society is pervaded with this antipathy and discriminatory attitude towards mutants, but all this is not an important thing for Leon. Even if this society discriminates against mutants, it will not affect him. The reason is simple: because he has money. Because he has power, because he is powerful. After capturing Magneto and the Mutant Brotherhood gang, Leon began his meticulous work. His job was to extract the X genes in these human bodies and then seal them. Among them, especially the ability of Magneto and the ability of the Wonder Woman are the most, of which Magneto's ability is naturally, needless to say, can control magnetic forces, and has the innate ability to control all metal substances. The ability of the Demon Woman is a more special one among many mutants, which can change its own cells and become any kind of shape, whether it is gender or body structure. It can be changed from the inside out, which is the most perfect transformation ability. And this ability is actually a catalyst, because although her X gene cannot allow her to have other superpowers after transformation, but it can perfectly integrate this superpower. The Sentinel robot in the original plot of the movie is based on her genes and cells as the core, covering many kinds of superpowers. Her X gene is a catalyst and a perfect compatibility factor, and with her genetic samples, Leon can even start making artificial humans from scratch. But this was just a plan he had in mind, and it wasn't too perfect. Although he had also fused a kind of transformation ability, this transformation ability only changed the shape of the body part, so as to achieve the characteristics of deformation, which was much weaker than the ability of the Demon Woman to completely imitate. Okay. By implanting myself with the Magic Woman's ability to change, compatibility with other abilities will no longer be a problem in the future, and I can withstand more abilities with my own body. The power of the Phoenix changes my body and strengthens my strength, but in the end it is only a single force, and a single ability will be limited in the later stages, when facing more powerful enemies, and this restriction is not yet visible, and in the end it will definitely become a short board for itself. Leon had known the unity of the Phoenix divine power long ago, and although the Phoenix Force was an extremely powerful divine power in the entire Marvel Universe, it was not that there was no other force that could match it, and as far as he knew, a single apocalypse was not something that ordinary mutants could deal with. So for other superpowers, he has also been pursuing. He has a vision, a very crazy idea, based on the Phoenix divine power, with other mutant abilities, to build an old unbreakable self. One day he can be called the god of mutants, or even the god of the entire Marvel, and then he will be considered successful. I have to say that his ambition is not small, and his wild hopes are amazing. The X-gene extraction of Magneto and the Demon Woman was very successful. It did not take him much time at all, and the abilities of other mutants among the mutant brothers were also extracted, but these abilities were not too strong in his opinion, and did not have much effect on his ability to improve his own ability, so they were all sealed. And he and the Phoenix power have not yet reached a balance, and it is not suitable for the rapid transplantation of the abilities of Magneto and the Demon Woman, so this plan will have to wait a few days. After doing this, even if Leon is temporarily idle, he participated in the original plot of this movie. The damage to the entire plot is huge. It can be said that because of his existence, the plot of X-Men 1 was cut off from the waist. From that moment on, he couldn't know where the plot would go later, because it was a living world, and his great influence changed the direction of many things in this world. However, Leon is not worried. He is very clear about his goals. Even if there is no prophetic foresight of the plot, he can do a lot of things according to his own ideas in the future. Episode 21. This time, Leon put the backbone members of the Brotherhood of Mutants into a pot, but only spared the saber-toothed tiger, who, although he hated Leon to the bone, knew very well that the gap between his own strength and Leon's previous was too big, and it was basically impossible to take revenge, so he fled on his own after Leon left. Leon didn't have much interest in him now, and keeping the saber-toothed tiger was just a casual move for him to be bored, and it wouldn't have any impact on some of his plans. After he finished the work at hand, he directly sealed Magneto and his men, which was not to kill him and seal his body, but to freeze it in a state of deep coma. He will not kill Magneto for the time being, because this will also become a pawn for him, keep him, and he will gather more mutants around him, which is far stronger than Leon sending people out to actively find mutants. After idleness, Leon's life went on as usual, as if none of this had happened, and in the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. Leon's wealth is huge, but he is not the kind of person who is devoted to work, and to put it seriously, he works for no more than 24 hours a month, and most of the rest of the time is used for fun, and some of it is to carry out various complicated experiments. Leon felt that if he lived a new life, he would have to make himself comfortable, so the requirements for life were still quite high. Thanks to his clever brain, he has built a huge business empire single-handedly, and thanks to his long-formed outlook on life, some of his ideas are extremely firm, and they will not change because of other words and deeds. After coming into this world, there were very few people who cared too much, and Adeline was one of them. He had been hiding from his titular adoptive mother for a long time, and early this morning, he received a call from Aunt Adeline, who told him very clearly on the phone that if he did not meet with her today, she would go to the TV station for a search advertisement. This is not a joke, Adeline really did it. Leon is very rich, ordinary people cannot imagine that there is money, so he is also very generous to Adeline. After all, it is a person who has lived together for several years, or his own nominal elder. He will give Adeline a large amount of money every month. A month's living expenses are enough for normal people to live for decades or even a lifetime. Therefore, compared with ordinary people, Adeline also belongs to the category of rich people, and these money began after Leon earned the first deposit. Until now it has been almost 5 or 6 years, so accumulated, the net worth is naturally not small. But she did not yearn for any high society. As a high school teacher, she has her own social circle, but in the past few years, she has changed a lot of boyfriends, which really makes Leon have some headaches. Not only women worship gold, there are also such people among men, and it is very unpleasant. Adeline has encountered several such scumbags in succession, 3 of whom were sunk by Leon, 2 of whom were sent to prison by him to pick up soap. Only one is not too much of a problem, but he is a mutant. In order not to involve Adeline in the dispute between mutants, he also used small means to get rid of the egg. So in this way, Adeline has not been married, and Leon has been self-supporting at the age of 13, and it is usually rare to see a face, so it is indeed difficult for Adeline to live alone without a family and love. So today, Leon really has no reason to shirk, he can only obediently go to meet her, and has been mentally prepared to be preached. After all, his private life. Don't say it. The good news is that the self-healing ability that comes from the saber-toothed tiger has reached a balance with the power of the phoenix at this time, and the appearance of his body has not broken from time to time, but the inside of the body is still suffering from some changes because of the growth of the phoenix power. Fortunately, it is no longer very painful, because this change is the onlooker level of the cell. Leon got up early today and drove to a high school in downtown New York, where Adeline was teaching, a chemistry teacher, popular with some adolescent teenagers in school, and some of the bold often asked her out for coffee, and she often used this matter in front of Leon as a joke. Leon got out of the car in a casual suit, holding a bouquet of indigo roses in his hand and walking on campus. His handsome appearance brought him a lot of return rates, thanks to his exposure rate comparable to a star. So many people in the student group also know him. Girls see him cover their mouths and exclaim, "Boys are showing an unhappy look." He knew the road lightly, went straight to the classroom office. No way, he knew it too well. Who made him graduate from this high school? Episode 22. Knocking on the door and entering, I looked up and saw a blonde girl sitting behind a desk, writing something, hearing the movement of opening the door, looking up, and then showing a look of surprise. "Oh my God, my dear Leon, are you finally willing to come and see your mother, Adeline?" Adeline got up in surprise, went around the desk and opened her arms to him, and the first thing that caught Liang's eyes was a pair of huge ones on his chest, which was definitely the envy of women, and it was also the dream of countless men. But Liang faced such a woman. Some are just embarrassed. Really, the thief is embarrassed. It is already late autumn, and he does not know whether the air conditioning temperature in the office is high, and his forehead is sweating. "I really can't stand her enthusiasm. You say no, it's not appropriate." Not to refuse, he was extremely uncomfortable, and finally he could only smile dryly and greet him, and Adeline gave her a strong hug. Adeline is very beautiful, the most standard Western female appearance, 3-dimensional features, deep eyes, white skin and enchanting figure. That is to say, she is not yet 30 years old, and some people believe Leon gave her money. It is estimated that half of her is used to consolidate her beauty. "Come and sit here, let your mother see. I haven't seen you in more than 3 months, you seem to have grown a little taller." Adeline is extremely happy about Liang's arrival, not only because of Liang's life, but also because Liang has shown precocious maturity since childhood, and the small face that people can't help but pinch twice since childhood. In the unique motherhood of women, Adeline also poured real feelings into Liang. "Maybe, it's really getting a little taller." Liang responded with a smile on his face, and then hurriedly picked up the flower in his hand and said, "To you, dear Adeline, may you always be young and beautiful." Wow, I like it so much, huh? As he spoke, he kissed Leon on the face. Fortunately, this was Adeline's private office, and Leon could only sit down with a smile, and then quickly change the subject. Adeline, is there anything wrong with calling me over this time? Oh, my dear Leon, it is so sad that you ask this. How long have we not seen each other? For more than 3 months, as your guardian, you've been with other women far longer than I have. Leon coughed dryly, but I'm an adult. When I am an adult, don't I have any love for you? Are you planning to be out there for the rest of your life and not ready to come back and see me? Adeline asked strongly. In other words, others dared to ask him so strongly. Leon had already slapped him, but for his adoptive mother, he really didn't have any temper. When I came home at the age of 6, the first thing I did was to bathe with her. Yes, you read that right, just take a bath with her. Where could she think that the body of a minor contained an adult heart, and the enthusiasm that came over him at that time almost did not scare him away. Then it was the meal together. A table of dishes was very sumptuous, and the welcome dinner made Leon remember it now. Next. It's just sleeping together, and that's not all. Leon has to endure the brilliance of bedtime children's stories, this horrific memory that he has already experienced once in his previous life, and he has to experience it a second time in his life. It is reasonable to say that parents in Europe and the United States treat their children and let their children develop an independent personality from an early age, but they do not know which of Adeline's muscles is wrong, and they have specifically looked for the living habits of Asians on the internet. Stereotypes kill people. This is the point that Leon wants to complain about the most. He experienced such a life for a total of 2 years, and 2 years later, at the age of 8, he said that he did not want to go on like this, could not imagine an adult with a sound mind, trapped in a young body, every day to endure meticulous care from his adoptive mother. After a long time he was not crazy has been a firm thought. But 2 years is enough time for Adeline to have normal mother-son feelings for him, and then. Although his life has changed somewhat, the care from Adeline is no less. It wasn't so much that he went out on his own at the age of 13 as that he had escaped from that home, and although he knew that doing so would make Adeline sad, he had to do so for the sake of his normal life and the great cause of his sister. Then in the past few years, he rarely went back except for school holidays, and because of the planned expansion of his own ability and property, he began his own business, and as his career got bigger and bigger, the time to go back was even less. In the end, he is still very guilty of Adeline. After all, the other party is the only one in the world who really pays for himself without asking for anything in return. Okay, well, you decide. Leon compromised. Adeline immediately showed a smile on her face, hugged him affectionately, and said, "This is very good, come back with me in the next few days, accompany me well, and I have something to tell you. You have a sister? What?" Liang's eyes widened and he subconsciously said, "Are you pregnant?" "No." Adeline realized that what she had just said was inappropriate, so she hurriedly said, "Our family has welcomed a boarding girl, who is in high school here, and is as talented as you." Phew. Leon was really taken aback. Episode 23. American boarding culture is also very prominent, such as want to go to other states to study, if it is a minor, will choose a family boarding, so as to complete the school. There are many American families, is very welcome boarding students to the home. Generally such people will be accepted by the family as a member of the family. Adeline quietly and indirectly accepted a boarding student, which surprised Leon, and at the same time felt some guilt, which was obviously due to the fact that there was no one around to accompany her. Okay, just a few days of nothing. Leon agreed crisply. That's it, you're here waiting for me to get off work. Adeline rode. Leon shrugged, this little thing is not inevitable. Just at this time the class time came. Adeline hugged him again and said, "My dear little Leon, wait for me here, I will be back soon." Saying that the textbook handouts were ready, he ran out in a hurry. Leon was extremely familiar with this place, and there was no sense of restraint, so he lay down on the sofa and took out his mobile phone to start boring time. It was almost noon now, and Adeline's job was easy because of the school shares, and of course, the private high school shares were given to her by Leon. All she had to do was finish her class every day, and the rest was all her private time. Leon didn't wait long, and after more than 40 minutes, Adeline returned to the office. The two chatted for a while, and Adeline took him home. Adeline's home, or Leon's home, was located a little further out of downtown New York, just 2 blocks from the school, less than 20 minutes by car, very convenient. A small villa in the rich area, very ordinary American building, with a small courtyard in front of the door, a small garden behind the door, and a swimming pool, a white 2-story villa in the center. This is the home where Leon has lived for several years. Returning here again, Leon also had some feelings, but there were a lot of memories of him here. Adeline cared for Leon as always, as if in her image, Leon was still the same child who looked a little emaciated, and the two had lunch at home at noon, and Leon accompanied Adeline on the street for 2 hours, and when it was almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he was sent by Adeline to pick up his sister. Yes, it is indeed the sister. After all, even if it is a foreign boarding student, it is also a member of this family, and Adeline attaches great importance to it, and must be picked up by Leon himself. What a head-scratching task. Leon has no temper with Adeline, and is the only person in this world who can make Leon a little helpless. She represents Leon's childhood, gives him meticulous care, and makes his original strangeness to this world become familiar under her care. Smiling and shaking his head, Leon drove to the high school where Adeline taught, where his cheap sister went to school, and he wrote down the name, but with some doubts. Lorna Dane? This name seems to feel a little familiar no matter how you look at it. Have you seen or heard it somewhere? And can't think of it now? Changing to drive, Leon changed and thought. Svija, search for the name Lorna Dane. Leon rode. Okay, sir, please wait. Svija's voice came from the car stereo. 2 minutes later, Svija's voice rang out again. Sir, in the whole world, a total of 21,000 people named Lorna Dane have been searched, of whom 696 are men, and after narrowing the scope, a woman named Lorna Dane has been found at St. Nosai's High School, aged 16 and in her third year of high school. Leon nodded. The vehicle is autonomous, and the information will be displayed. Okay, sir. The next moment, a photo and some images appeared on the windshield. In the photo is a green-haired girl, with a beautiful appearance. A pair of eyes is very Asian, unique Dan Phoenix eye temperament. The eyes are also faintly green. After seeing this young girl, Leon suddenly raised an eyebrow, and he finally remembered that he had heard the name there, and he knew about this girl before he crossed. Lorna Dane, Magneto's youngest daughter, nicknamed Polaris, has the same abilities as Magneto, all are magnetic control, and it seems that she has now awakened her superpowers. But why did she attend St. Noah's High School? Isn't she supposed to be with the Brotherhood of Mutants? With that, Leon smiled and shook his head. This world is really small enough. I just kidnapped Magneto, and when I turned my head, I met his daughter. Leon looked at the photo with his arm around him, and a smile suddenly appeared on his face after half a moment. Not to mention, this girl's appearance is really in line with the aesthetic style of Asians, and suddenly she is interested. Episode 24. It took Leon 10 minutes to get to the school. At this time St. Nosai High School had finished school, and groups of high school students walked out of the campus. These people have the unique vitality of young people, one by one self-confidence. Leon and these people are actually the same age, especially in the senior high school group, basically the same age as him, and he is no longer a student. He is still driving a sports car today. The color is bright, it is very conspicuous, parked on the side of the road to attract the attention of countless people. Many students throw envious eyes to his side, and bold girls also come forward to talk. Unfortunately, Leon is an adult and has no feeling for these student sisters. He now prefers more mature women, or it is very much in line with his taste, so he smiled and responded a few words, completely without wanting to invite female students to the car. His eyes scanned the crowd, and he didn't see the target appear, so he picked up the phone and dialed a number, and after a short broadcast, the phone was connected. Hello, who are you? A girl with a very good voice sounded on the other side. I'm looking for Lorna Dane. Leon rode. I am, who are you? Lorna Dane asked again. I'm Leon, Adeline is my adoptive mother, and he asked me to take you home. Leon said truthfully. Who? Lorna Dane said subconsciously. Leon, your boarding place is my house. Leon said again. The other side reacted and said busily, sorry, I heard Adeline say about you, I know you are the famous genius entrepreneur, right? Leon was slightly stunned, and then said, if Adeline is not talking about someone else, then the very famous genius entrepreneur in your mouth should be me. Wow, unbelievable, where are you now? I'm right outside the door. Leon rode. Okay, I'll come out right away. Hanging up the phone on the other side, Leon scratched his head a little, and then shrugged his shoulders. The feeling given to him by the opposite side was no different from that of an ordinary girl, and he did not know how she could be so grumpy and extreme in the original work. Just this time, Leon also had some interest in her, and wanted to know what kind of person was on the other side. A moment later his cell phone rang, and it was Lorna Dane who called and asked him directly where he was at the door, because he hadn't seen him. Leon had already seen her at this time, a young girl standing at the school gate, dark green long hair, exquisite face, and a pair of eyes full of charm, revealing a different kind of charm, at this time was waiting at the door. Hey, here! Leon lowered the car window and shouted. Lorna Dane followed the sound and immediately saw his sports car, which caused great wind, with a smile on her face, and she walked in to greet him very outwardly. Hi, Lorna Dane, stay at your house now, and we can be friends later. Leon smiled at the control key to open the door. The scissors door automatically opened. The latter sat in very familiarly. He carefully looked at this young girl at this time, the height of about 1.73 m. It was slightly shorter than him. The appearance naturally did not say. Even if it was placed among all the women he had experienced, it was absolutely superior. He now wondered how he would feel if the other party learned that his father had been captured and the murderer was in front of him. Of course, you are welcome to come to the house for boarding, and Adeline is already preparing dinner at home, and we may be able to help now when we go back. Want to go back now? Or hang out? Leon asked. Lorna Dane thought for a moment. Let's go back first. Okay. Leon shrugged his shoulders and didn't say anything more. The sports car deftly turned and drove back and forth along the road. Lorna Dane behaved not much different from ordinary girls, and after getting into the car, the decorations in the car seemed very novel, and from time to time they were amazed. Such a car, many people cannot drive in a lifetime. You have such an achievement at such a young age. It is amazing. Leon laughed, pressed a button in the car, and then released the steering wheel, and then the two seats moved backwards, and the space in the car suddenly became much larger. He turned his chair, took out a bottle of drink from a dark refrigerator in the back and handed it to the other party. It's not too great, if you want to do it, it's still easy to do. Leon secretly pretended to be forced, and Lorna Dane's reaction was to raise an eyebrow and say directly, I'm curious about you. Curious about me? Leon asked. Why do you have so many girlfriends? Lorna Dane asked. Uh-huh. The question caught him off guard, and he looked at the other party with a smile and said, You are so curious about my private life. Do you want to be my girlfriend too? Liang's bluntness made her a little stunned, and then she laughed and said very directly, No, who knows? Liang was slightly stunned, and then he also laughed, and the girl in front of him was different from the way he imagined, very bluntness unique to American girls. Let's get along anyway. Leon rode. Episode 25. Adeline had prepared a sumptuous dinner at home, and it was still too early for dinner, of course, but the Americans were free and comfortable, and these were only drizzles. Along the way, Leon and Lorna Dane also get acquainted with each other, and Leon takes the opportunity to ask something about her family, who tells him very directly. In this way, Leon understood that she was the daughter of the electromagnetic king, but she did not have much concept of her father, who was fostered outside since childhood, and who had not received love from her parents since she was a child. He originally lived in New Jersey, with his adoptive parents, and only arrived in New York after high school, less than 2 years after jumping 3 grades, and now at the age of 16, he has basically completed his senior year of high school. Similar lives, so that the two have extra topics to talk about. After arriving home, the two have been able to call each other by abbreviation. Leon called her Lorna, and she directly called Leon Lee. Adeline very much hopes to see such a scene, naturally full of joy, a table of delicious food, most of which are Chinese food, in addition to steak and other Western food. The combination of Chinese and Western makes people appetite. The three of them talked about a lot at the dinner table, but the main topic was Leon. Lorna Dane was indeed very curious about Leon, asked him a lot about the company, and it was clear that she was still a very ordinary girl, with a vision of the future, but every time in the smile, she could feel a little uneasy and worried. Leon certainly knew why, but he didn't break it either. After dinner, the two help Adeline clean up the mess, and then Lorna Dane and Leon decide to go out for a walk, an idea that Adeline agrees with, but does not go with the two. The two of them just wandered the streets of the community, and such a time was also a rare way for Leon to relax, and he did not resist. Do you know that according to estimates, 1 person in 1,000 people in this world will be a mutant, and this flatness and proportion will become higher and higher? Lorna Dane said suddenly. Leon raised an eyebrow and asked her, Why did you suddenly say this? Lorna Dane shook her head and added, Mutants are supposed to give hope to the world. They are new humans, representing the new fruits of human evolution, not the two races as they are now, making the two races oppose. Leon looked sideways at the words, and he took a serious look at the girl next to him, unexpectedly mature. You're right, but unfortunately, it's a matter of 2 ethnic groups, and individuals like us are too small to change anything. Leon's words were clearly modest, and with his current ability and status, if he wanted to, he could indeed change the situation, although difficult, but not impossible. No, individuals can change a lot of things. Lorna Dane shook her head. Then she suddenly turned to face Leon and moaned slightly, Do you know mutants? What? I mean, do you have mutants around you? Lorna Dane said. When Leon saw her like this, he nodded slightly, and said softly, There are indeed mutants around me. This answer surprised Lorna Dane, but when she heard it, she laughed and said, Then it will be simple, I will tell you a secret. What secret? Leon already had a conjecture in his mind. I'm a mutant. What? Leon frowned, and then asked, This should be the deepest secret in your heart, and we have only known each other on the first day. Why did you tell me such an important secret? Lorna Dane said, My intuition tells me that you are the one who can help me. Leon was speechless, and said, Little girl, are you watching too many novels and movies? I'm the one who kidnapped your old man. Seeing his silence, Lorna Dan suddenly approached him, almost touching him, and could feel each other's breathing. She just looked directly into Leon's eyes and said slowly, "You're also a mutant, aren't you?" Liang's frown slowly relaxed, and a smile gradually appeared on his face, asking, "Why are you so determined?" "Because it was Victor who told me." "What?" Leon did not react for a while, and then he cried and laughed. At this time, his face became very flat, and he also looked directly at the other party, and he saw the imperceptible panic and fear in the depths of the other party's eyes. "That's the way it is, you know it, don't you?" he asked. "Yes, I know you kidnapped my father, and that's what Victor told me, and he told me better be careful of you, but I never imagined that Adeline would be your adoptive mother, and that sometimes the world is really too small. Now that I'm in your hands, what are you going to do with me?" Lorna Dane said calmly. The atmosphere seemed to freeze at this moment. Leon looked at her half-dazed but suddenly smiled, reached out and wrapped his hand around her waist and took it into his arms, and then said, "You really made me interested, girl, this is what you yourself fell into my hands."